Welcome into the Scarlet Shootaround podcast. Here for our conference preview episode here. Very excited to get going. I am one of your hosts, Blake, with here Mike. Ready to get going. Really excited about the season. We both did some research on rosters, schedules. Looking forward to getting into some of this stuff and very excited about this first Big Ten season under the podcast. So without getting too much started, I want to open up by talking about what we expect out of this season. So Mike, I'll let you take the floor. What would make a good season for you here for the Huskers in the Big Ten?
Yeah, you want to push expectations, right? You want to set a high bar. Having said that, I think honestly an NIT bid, like we'd kind of discussed off the podcast, NIT bid, getting a home game would be big. That's not to say I don't think this team's not capable of the big dance. If we can manage to be, I got us here in the schedule, if we can manage to be above 100 or above 500, in Big Ten play, I think that'd be a good mark to shoot for. The Big Ten might be a little down this year, that's to be seen, but I think that's two very attainable goals for this team, two expectations that I think are very achievable, getting the NIT bid, above 500 record in conference. That's just kind of what I'm looking at. If I see those two things, also, some fight, it's tough with the transfers coming in, but you see some fight, you see the boys try, and that's what I'm looking at. What are you thinking?
I think we're in a tough spot here because Fred has been here. I want to say this is year 5, maybe 6. I'm not entirely sure. Fred has been here this long. We have no postseason berth to speak about. We threatened it a little bit last year. In all honesty, it really wasn't much of a threat. In hindsight, we saw that this team wasn't as close as we really thought they were to the NIT bid because They were totally left out. I think been following it pretty close last year. We were like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th team out or something like that. I'm sure we turned down a CBI invite or whatever. I know we are the losingest program in college basketball, but we are still proud enough to not take a CBI invite.
Not going to the CBI. Yeah.
Now the program's proud enough. I'm not. I mean, I would have enjoyed a CBI tournament game. I would have bought ESPN Plus to watch that. But I get it. That's not something that we probably want to associate ourselves with. So I understand the line of thinking. But the way I look at it, I think you have to have postseason or bust. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that has to be NCAA tournament necessarily. And we'll get into this later, but I broke down our schedule. I got us at a decent looking record. Hopefully same thing as you said, 500 level in the conference, somewhere around there. Threaten it, give yourself a shot at a berth, be in the conversation in February and March. Have something for your fan base to look forward to late in season, and give yourself a chance. So I'm really hoping for a postseason berth. I think this team is deep enough. I think we've got 8 to 9 to potentially even 10 deep on this team that can play. Now, serious minutes, you're talking a lot less than that, but I think this team is good enough to earn an NIT berth, and my goal is to be in the conversation for the NCAA tournament come March. Just be in it. Get yourself in the tournament, have a shot to make some magic, be in a position where you avoid the play-in game, give yourself a path forward, and see where you go with it. So, Mike, you kind of want to talk about what the Columbus Dispatch came out with, what that poll looked like?
Yeah, they got the Big Ten preseason poll. Just looking at what the Big Ten's shaping up to be this year. They got Purdue as one, not a surprise. Returning Big Ten Player of the Year, National Player of the Year, and Zach Edey. The dude's giant, tough to defend,
freak,
massive. After that, Michigan State, can't count out Izzo ever. It's what it is. I think they tend to get off to slower starts sometimes in the year, but late down the season, they're always right there somehow. So Maryland, I think they're gonna have a good squad this year. Personally, we'll see. They're slated at 3rd. After that, we got Illinois. What Brad Underwood's done there. It's a good job. It's great. They got a great program there. If Nebraska managed to turn into something like that, it would be over the moon.
I think everybody would be very
that's a great program. After that, we got Wisconsin at 5, Indiana at 6. Kind of get into the middle of the conference here. We got Ohio State, Northwestern, Iowa at 9, Rutgers at 10, Michigan at 11. Nebraska slotted in the 12 spot with Penn State and Minnesota rounding it out. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's an easy spot for all Big Ten writers and whatnot to put Nebraska in the cellar, right? It's been a program that hasn't done anything for a long time. Last tournament berth was 2014, so I get it. I understand why we're that low. That being said, I don't know that a lot of the writers that voted on this truthfully looked deep into Nebraska's roster. Who can blame them? I get it, but I'm telling you, there is a lot of serious depth here. Now, the big question is, can this depth translate into the Big Ten? Because if you're Boogie Coleman, for example, and what do I have written down here? I mean, he averaged 14.6 a game, 4.9 rebounds, and 3.8 assists. So, can that level of play translate to Big Ten play? Because having, and no offense to Loyola Marymount or whatever, Eastern Michigan closing out on your three-point shot with an empty crowd is a hell of a lot different than having a Michigan State athletic 5-star wing closing out your three-pointer. It's just a way different deal, right? Yeah. So the numbers are there. The production is there. Can it transfer to the Big Ten? I don't know. I seem to think so. Maybe a homer take. I don't know where you fall on that, but the clay is there. And I still firmly believe in Fred's coaching. I think he's got the X's and O's in his back pocket. I really do. And I think that showed last year when he adjusted the offense to run through Derek Walker. He has never had an offense that has run through an interior post player that didn't shoot threes. So he's able to adjust. I'm a Fred Hoiberg coaching believer. But can he take the pieces he has and morph it into a team that can threaten the NCAA tournament? I don't know. What say you?
As you kind of alluded to, I'm not maybe quite as sold on it. Like you said, it's a different game coming from those mid majors too. The Big Ten. It's the Big Ten. It's 14 very competitive teams. Sometimes some more competitive than others, but every team's gonna have athletes. And that's just something that it's tough you can't simulate that, if you haven't seen it before. So it's like you said, it's kind of a tough spot. I looked at our roster too. I have some more question marks about the point guard position than maybe you have. I do think we're a deep team though. I got some transfers in here. We got Alec coming in. Question marks on Ulyss. That goes back to the point guard thing. I know you're maybe not as high with him as I am. But we're getting starters coming in. To mention some guys leaving, Brian Bach out. He had 12.9 minutes a game. We got Dawson out. What do you have him at? 14 minutes a game. These are depth pieces, but I think we made up the depth in the transfer portal. So I think 12 is a tough spot to put Nebraska. And we have it written down here. I know we've kind of talked about it. The whole Penn State. We're a very old team. We're kind of trying to maybe bank on some of that experience. Win some games we shouldn't. But you gotta hold it down and win the ones you should. So.
And I think you can expect to win some games you shouldn't, especially there on the road, right? When you have a team that's been there, done that. Maybe not a team necessarily, but players who have been there, done that, played on the road. I mean, I don't know what that margin is that we lead the Big Ten in age, but I'd venture to guess. I mean, you just look up and down the roster. Coleman, I believe, a 5-year player. Tominaga, he's been in the program for at least 3, knowing he's a senior. Yeah. Bryce Williams, I believe he was a 3rd or 4th year transfer. Juwan Gary, I mean, that is a grown freaking man, right? And he played at Alabama, right? Yeah. So, I mean, you've got guys who have been around the block, and whether they can win together is to be seen. So we'll see if they can build chemistry. Fred has said in his press conferences he likes where this team is at from a chemistry standpoint, trying to follow a lot of the same pathway that last year's team did, knowing that they built a lot of chemistry as the season went on. So we'll see how that develops. I feel good about it. But we'll see what's on the court in the Stone exhibition coming up here. So who did you have for your projected starting 5 out of our roster?
Yeah. I had Coleman at the point guard, as I had mentioned previously. It's a question mark for me. Ramel Lloyd injured. We kind of talked about that, rolled ankle day to day a bit, but I think he can kind of maybe push for minutes here, depending on what we're looking for. Because there's always Jamarcus Lawrence. He's kind of a combo guard, can play the 1 or the 2. So depending what Fred's feeling necessarily, I feel like the point guards is just such a big question mark for me personally. At the 2, I got the man, Casey Tominaga. No surprise there. Big Ten preseason, all Big Ten. He's getting honors, which is incredible. Good for him. I got Bryce Williams at the 3, Juwan Gary at the 4, and Mast at the 5. But looking through our depth pieces then, I think beyond the starting 5, those first guys off the bench, we've mentioned it now, depth. Lawrence is going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of minutes. And Wilcher, he's played for us. He's played a lot of minutes already. He's
better on the block.
He's gonna come in. He's gonna give a lot of minutes. And then Fred seems to like Alec a lot. I don't know if he's gonna be the eighth man, ninth man. I don't know where he's gonna end up. Seventh man, who knows? Maybe it just depends on what we need in a specific game, specific matchup. But I think those starting five, and then like I said, Lawrence and Wilcher off the bench are probably the first two for me. So that's what I'm looking at for the lineup for this year.
Yeah, I think I'm very high on Boogie Coleman. Just kind of going down the list. I think his production now, albeit the MAC level, I know he played at Missouri, didn't put up great numbers necessarily that maybe we were hoping for transferring in, but Ball State played well. Late addition to this roster after we kind of found out Ulis was most likely not going to be playing early. Still waiting to see on that, and we'll touch on that later how that whole situation ends up. But I really like Boogie Coleman. I think he's the favorite to run the point out of the gate. Fred has obviously mentioned that Lawrence has been running the point in practice as well, and did on occasion last year, more so by necessity than preference. But coming into the two guard, I think you can't really start anybody but Casey in that spot, being all Big Ten. The question here is his defense capable enough to be able to justify starting him and playing him 30 plus minutes? I know he gives you a lot of offense, but when you're talking about, again, I bring up the athletic Michigan State 5-star wing or Indiana 5-star wing or shooting guard. Is he capable enough on defense to have a good enough plus minus for just to justify him playing that many minutes? We will see. Or does he play better as a sixth man, right? Things that I think Fred will find out as this team develops. Looking at the three spot, Bryce Williams, I was really excited about him. Transferring in from Charlotte, averaging 13.8, 5.3, and 1.2. Shot 40% from three-point land last year. I think that's a great addition. 48% from the field. And he was second team All-CUSA and the CBI MVP for the tournament. So this guy has played postseason basketball, albeit CBI, as we mentioned. But postseason basketball and meaningful basketball in March, and having that experience, I think, especially coming down the stretch, when you talk about February, March, Big Ten tournament time, I think that will prove invaluable when you get to that point. Juwan Gary, proven rebounder, not necessarily a scorer, only 26% from three, not known as a guy from down there, but he's more of your garbage guy, right? And something that a lot of people overlook is he averaged 1.4 steals a game last year. This is a guy that has a huge wingspan, can get involved in the passing lanes, and more of a defensive presence than offensive. But again, this is a guy that's going to do the dirty work, get involved down deep, get you some offensive boards, give your 3-point shooters another shot off the offensive glass. I think he pencils into the 4 spot pretty easily. And then very interesting here with the Mast at 5. I think this is the first legitimate 5 guy that Fred Hoiberg has had that can shoot a legitimate 3-pointer. He comes in from Bradley shooting 35% from 3, 52% from the field, and was first team all MVC and third in player of the year voting in that conference. So this is a guy, again, we talk about, he's proven it at the lower level. Can that level of play transfer in to the Big Ten? To be seen, but again, the clay's there. Now, whether or not Fred can build the offense how I think he always originally intended, focused on offense with 3-point shooting, Mass will be a huge part of that, being able to pull his defender out, forcing him to cover that 5 and opening up driving lanes. So we'll see how that develops. Now, coming off the bench, I have Lawrence as the first guy off the bench. Being able to play the 1 or 2 spot, he can fill in for Casey or Coleman if needed. I think Alex is going to be a huge guy coming off the bench. Fred has said that he's a very physical forward, gets involved deep, very energetic in practice. At New Mexico, he averaged 4.8, 7.3, and 1.4. Does not shoot a 3-pointer well last year, only shot 16%, but the year prior, UMKC shot over 30%. So this is a guy that I think has the ability to shoot the 3. Not going to be a guy you depend on doing it, but I think Fred may draw up a play or two for him or give him the green light if in end of shot clock situations, give him a shot there. So then we'll try have at the 8. It's a tough spot. Again, it's a good problem to have, having a lot of depth in your top 8. I find Wilcher to probably be the odd man out. Now, Fred has said that he's been playing very well at practice, so I could be totally off on this, and we'll find out again in the Stone exhibition, where he slots into that lineup. I know Fred loves him. He's played a lot of basketball, albeit unfortunately for us not winning basketball, but he's always been known to kind of get hot in January, February, later in the season. So I think Wilcher's a great player. I'm not entirely sure where he fits into this, especially when you have Casey, how we had him come on so well late in the season. Now you kind of get to your more depth pieces. Eli Rice, a guy that played really well out there in Spain. One of those games I saw a box score. He had 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 offensive boards. This is a guy that I think is able to play quality minutes if we end up needing him. I don't think it'll be by design that he plays, but I think he's a spot that we can have some good depth if he develops a little bit of an offensive presence in meaningful Big Ten play. Rounding out the roster, unfortunately, I have Sam Hoiberg as the odd man out. It's just, you have to call it what it is. He's a little bit of an undersized guy. Shoots a pretty good 3-ball, but again, only played last year really because of injury issues. So I think it's a great guy, a great piece to have on the back end of your bench because if need be, he will come in and play valuable minutes. So do you want to talk about Aaron Eulis and that whole situation?
Yeah, it's messed up. Frankly, it's a tough situation, waiting to hear back from NCAA on what's going to happen with that. He potentially starting point guard for us. We'll see what happens with that. But gambling, don't do it if you're a college athlete, or a professional athlete. We've seen in the NFL multiple times now too. You just got to stay away from it. It's a tough spot. I don't know. I guess I don't know too much about the details. I just know kind of the general aspects of that. I don't know. Do you have any insight on that I don't?
Not entirely. I just know that he was involved in that probe. Now we've seen the NCAA operate. Who knows when we're going to get an answer? Now that being said, I think, in my personal opinion, I don't know that he was going to start anyway. I think Coleman's a better piece, but having a guard on your bench play most likely the 6th, 7th man, if he was eligible, having a guy like that able to come in off the bench, having played meaningful Big Ten minutes, especially on the road. You talk about road environments,
right?
Your Michigan States, your Purdue's, having played in those environments is very, very, very valuable to have on your bench. So, to me, not a starting piece. I could see why other people may think so. He did, I believe, have a 2-to-1 ratio in assist to turnover. So not a guy that protected the ball super well. So we'll see how that all ends up. Moving on down the depth bench a little bit, Matar Diop, Jeffrey Grace, and Burt. Do you have any take on those guys?
Diop, I'd love to see him play. I'll be honest. He's athletic. He's raw. He's athletic though. Love to see him get some minutes. We'll see what happens with him. He's big, he's long, and I think if he can just figure out how to play ball, it's tough. It's tough.
Does he know ball?
That's the question when it comes down to it. I'd love to see him get some minutes though, because the best way to learn is to play, right? And it's tough to say that he's going to be inserted into the lineup a lot. Is he going to get some minutes here or there? Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how Fred feels about it. Other than that, it's, we got a couple walk-ons. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen, though. It's a question mark. I guess you probably didn't think Hoiberg's going to get a ton of minutes last year, and here he is.
So you just never know. Come February, you never know who's going to be healthy.
And that's the big question. And a big upside that I think we've talked about plenty is our depth. I think maybe we can handle injuries a little better. Nobody wants to be injured, obviously. But if there's not that big of a separation between your top 5 and your next 3 or 4, maybe you can fill and plug in the gaps. And when that injury bug comes to, like it does for every team, maybe it doesn't bite you as much.
So when you talk about wild cards, Ramel Lloyd, so this is a guy that didn't play last year. We redshirted him. Very highly touted guy, 4-star if I remember correctly. Is he going to find a way into this rotation? What do you have?
I think he could.
On this?
I do. I honestly think he could. It depends to see how, as we've already talked about plenty, how does playing Ball State MAC ball transfer to Big Ten ball for Boogie, and being in a point guard, being the guy handling the ball, offense is kind of starting with you. That's the big question mark for me. He's got a bum ankle. He'll come back. He'll come back fine. Like you said, highly touted guy. I think, my understanding is that Boogie Coleman was kind of a late desperation addition to the team. We needed a point guard with Ulyss's issues, and So it wasn't necessarily looking like he's going to be the guy, but I think he can definitely carve out some minutes. I think he has the talent. I think he can do it. To be seen if he does, but I hope we get to see him out there on the court and give him a shot at least.
Love it. So that's kind of the roster breakdown. We're going to transition more so now into the schedule. So this schedule sets up a lot easier than years past. We're starting off with no big games. We're allowing this team time to gel. This has been an issue through the Hoiberg era, through the Tim Miles era. We're really kind of going back to the Doc Sadler style of scheduling where you give yourself a chance to get early wins, build confidence, build chemistry, and take that chemistry into the season. I think we saw in years past, especially in the Fred Hoiberg era, building schedules to make the postseason with difficult non-conference games was the path that we tried before. Very clearly, it has shown that was not a workable recipe.
Right.
So I remember going into conference play many times at close to 500 ball, and that's not where this team should be, nor, it should being the key word. Just going through the early games, Mike, if you want to kind of read through them, the Ken Pom numbers are not good. This is a cupcake Michigan football non-conference level of early season schedule. Go ahead and go through it.
Let me just say before I get into it, obviously we're looking at Ken Pom. It's helpful to look at these ratings. With that being said, Ken Pom does get better as the season goes on. So it's a rough idea, but yeah, I mean, we got Lindenwood, Florida A&M, Rider, and Stony Brook. All these teams above 229 in the Ken Pom. Worse than 229. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are 4, like you said, cupcakes to start the season. If they're not 4-0, I'm going to have some major concerns about this team. After that, we got a neutral site Oregon State game, Duquesne at home, and Cal State Fullerton. As I said, I think Duquesne is probably the first real test for this team. That not to discount the Oregon State team at all, especially being a neutral site game. It should be probably majority
neutral site, right?
Sioux Falls, I believe, yeah. So it should be majority Husker fans, but technically a neutral site game. Like I said, I think Duquesne is probably the first real test for this team. They're 89th in the Ken Pom. Nebraska's 58th, just for reference. So still quite a bit of separation, but definitely not in the 200s. So a little bit more talented team. Cal State Fullerton, another easy one, and then the big one,
our Super Bowl, the Creighton.
You can lose them all, but if you win that one,
the Creighton Blue Jays,
right. That's they're. Hurts me to say, but they're a good team.
I hate to say it.
I hate to say it. They're a good team. Year in, year out, they're a pretty good squad. That's the first major chance for a big win, a statement win for this team. It's going to be most likely going to be a Q1 win if we're talking about looking in March, things like that. Great chance to get a big win there. That's our 8th game of the season, so. After that, we get into the conference slate, though. Starting off on the road in conference, just like the football team every year, it seems like. It is what it is. At Minnesota, Michigan State at home, and then we have at K-State. Then we get North Dakota and South Carolina State at home. Continue the conference slate. Indiana at home, on the road at Wisconsin, Purdue at home, at Iowa, at Rutgers, Northwestern at home, Ohio State at home, on the road at Maryland, Wisconsin at home, at Illinois, at Northwestern, Michigan at home, Penn State at home, Indiana on the road, at home versus Minnesota, on the road for Ohio State, and then we close it out at home with Rutgers and on the road with Michigan. Any big games stand out to you? I mean, obviously we talked about Creighton. Anything else that you're kind of looking at that you maybe have circled?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that this Creighton game sets up for an absolutely electric environment at home, right? There is no reason you can't look at this ball club and say we should be 7-0 going into that Creighton game. And I asked the viewers to close their eyes and imagine a world where Nebraska is 7-0, probably not ranked, obviously, due to this schedule, but 7-0 Nebraska team hosting a top 10 Creighton team in our house and what that environment will be like. I get so excited thinking about it, and I really, really hope that we do our part to make that happen. Right. And quite frankly, if Creighton doesn't do their part, I'm not going to shed a tear.
I'm not going to be upset about it.
I'm not be too upset about that. But, I think the schedule sets up seriously very, very well for this team to kind of figure out its lumps, figure out the weaknesses, figure out the strong points, and give them a chance to be the best version of them that they can be, at least early season. So you're talking about your early Big Ten always does this weird. You start with 2 conference games in December thing. At Minnesota, I think there's a great shot that we can get that win. Minnesota program, since firing Pitino, has been horrifically bad. Last year, they were just atrocious, and I'm not entirely sure they're going to be a lot better this year.
Right.
Ken Pom has them slated at 112th, and I think part of that is just because the Big Ten, it's pretty deep at the top, so they kind of get some respect just due to that side of it, but this Minnesota team is not going to be good. We have to call a spade here. Yeah. So you get a great chance to start conference 1-0 with a win at Minnesota, and then, depending on how this Creighton game goes, you could have another absolutely electric environment with Tom Izzo coming into PBA in a, knock on wood, 9-0 Husker team. So, I think at least early season through December, you have a great shot to seriously make some noise, not only in regional circles, which really will help this program more than anything, but national circles. If you have a 9-0 Nebraska team or 8-0 Nebraska team rolling in with Michigan State, you're going to have national writers talking about this game. With
a win over Creighton, absolutely.
This is going to that will set up to be a huge game. So, got a really intriguing game at Kansas State. I was in the building last year for the neutral site, again, quote unquote neutral site game in Kansas City. That crowd was 95% Kansas State. So that was not a neutral site game as it was listed. But, that's going to be a really interesting game. I'd like to get to that one too and see how that environment looks. That program is still going to be good, down a little bit, lost a lot of pieces from last year in their magical run. So we'll kind of see how that looks out. End it with some more winnable tune-up games before you get into conference play. I think very interesting conference games that stand out to me. You have to you host Northwestern and you get them on the road. So a team that I think should be down a little bit. Boo Boo, he's still in the lineup there and still in that program. Seems like it is 9th year. Forever. But that program should be down a little bit from last year. You end the season with Rutgers at home. I think that's a very winnable game. You head to Ohio State. They should be down a little bit. You end the season with a 4-game stretch, hosting Minnesota, at Ohio State, hosting Rutgers, and heading to Michigan. I know the Chrysler Center up in Ann Arbor has been a house of horrors for this program. This Michigan team should be down from years past. So I'm not going to say that game is impossible to win. I imagine at that point, if you played that game today, we're probably about 12 to 13-point dogs. But I'm not going to say that with what Michigan has, that game is unwinnable. And again, you go back to the point of this team just needs to be in position to get that 8, 9, 10 seed, avoid the play-in game of the Big Ten tournament, and set yourself up for some neutral site quad 1, quad 2 wins. And if you can get a shot at 2 quad 1 wins in the tournament, at that point you sit back and let the cards fall right. So what's your outlook? What do you think about the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of handled the front end of that very well. I think feel the same way. If I'll be frank, if we're not undefeated going into Creighton, I'd be a little worried. Like I said, we got a little bit of a test with Duquesne, but I think it's a game we should win. Creighton, I got us jotted down for a win. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. It is what it is. But we'll see what happens. I think going back to the depth, this team can win games they probably aren't supposed to win. The question mark for me is, can they win the games they are supposed to win? If we can see that, I think they got a good chance. Big games for me, I got us winning at Iowa. That I feel like anytime you can steal a win on the road, especially in conference, that's a big one. Other than that, trying to defend home court. I have us winning at Michigan to end the season too. It's like you said, that it's been a house of horrors for us, but I don't see why this team can't win it. Having said that, though, I do have a couple home losses that maybe other people don't have us jotted in for. It's going to happen every year. It's not easy to win every game at home. You'd hope you could do it, defend home court. We'll see how this team does. Having said that, looking at our season, going through the whole list, I got us at 16-4 home for over the course of the season, 6-4 in conference at home. Not where you'd like it to be. Right, you got 10 home games. You hope to win more than 60% of them, to be honest. But we'll see what that brings. Road total, I got us at 4-7, 4-6 in conference. With that loss to K-State out of conference, winning 4 road games in conference isn't terrible. Just depending what you can do with the home slate. So I got us at 20-11 on the season, 10-10 in conference. I think That'll probably get us to slot somewhere in that 8 to 10 range in the conference, hopefully. As we'd mentioned, avoid that first playing game in the Big Ten tourney. I think that's a big, almost, I want to say a must, before the season starts, but I think it really might be a must. Who's to say maybe they make a run if they have to do a playing game, but I'd feel a hell of a lot better if they can avoid that and then see what happens. So yeah, I got that's what I got for the season this year.
Where do your records fall? Projected
Records.
for the Huskers.
On the high end, I would love to see us win, 22 games, 23, might be stretching it.
If you get to 23, you're in. I mean, you're in.
Yeah, that's highest peak. I'm ecstatic with the season. We're punching our ticket. We're gonna boogie in March.
Trademark it.
Right, we're gonna boogie in March. On the low end, though, if we lose something, you lose a Duquesne before, in the non-con, you lose to Creighton, I hate to see us with 16 wins would be heartbreaking. 17 would be not a great season. 18 wins, still not great. That's probably going to be leading to a play-in game in the Big Ten tourney. But yeah, so I'm hoping for somewhere in the 20 and 11 area. That's where I got us slated here when I went through ours, but that's kind of the brackets for me. How about you?
I've got us set for a 19-12 record. I think that splits out to 15-4 at home and 4-8 on the road. So I have us protecting home court pretty well in general, stealing a couple on the road. I think my road wins included heading up to Northwestern, getting them, heading up to – sorry, kind of looking at my notes here. Heading up to Rutgers, getting a win. We've proven we can done it last year. The rack does not scare anybody. I'm sorry. It's a high school gym. I'm not scared of the trapezoid. And I think this team, again, with that age, has an ability to do what a lot of our previous Husker teams have not been able to do, and that's go on the road with confidence, not be scared of any environments, and win ball games. Whether we have the shooting ability and defensive ability to do that, I don't know, but I do believe in the mental ability of this team, which maybe seems a little bit arbitrary. But, I feel good about this team heading on the road. I have us projected to finish 10-10 in conference. I think that moves to about 8th or 9th place in the Big Ten. I think I'm going to go more of a hard set boundary than you. I think it is absolutely necessary if we have any shot of playing important March basketball, meaning NCAA tournament, we have got to avoid that play-in game. Because if you're talking about getting to that point and needing to win a game or two, playing Minnesota in the play-in game does you nothing. Playing whoever is probably 13th, let's throw a random team out there, Penn State in there, is not going to do you anything. It's going to cause you more harm than hurt, right? So right. I think getting yourself a meaningful, doable path, which isn't much. Even the 10 seed is okay, but giving yourself a shot to avoid that play-in game, which I couldn't tell you the last time we were able to avoid that, which is embarrassing, sadly. But story of our program I think that's an absolute necessity. Now, postseason, I believe we fall just a little bit short. I think I said 19 wins based on our strength of schedule and especially our weak non-conference slate. It looks good on paper, probably not going to be good enough to get into an NCAA tournament with that number. Now it depends where they are, right? If we steal a Purdue win, that could change the narrative a little bit. I have us getting into the NIT as a 2 seed. Obviously hoping for more, but in my book, personally, if we host an NIT game, I think that's good enough to keep Fred's job. I think that's good enough to build a little bit of momentum for this program, heading down the right direction, see a positive winning record, see us play on TV games in March, although albeit NIT, I get it, but have us play meaningful basketball and at least be in the hunt for an NCAA tournament bid come February, and I'm pretty satisfied as a fan.
Yeah, I like you said, meaningful games in March. I don't know the last time we've had a meaningful game in March. It's been a long time. Last only Power 5 team without a win in the big dance. Not saying it's going to come this year, but progress, right? Fred's been here for a while. Let's just see some progress. I want to see us play in March, like you said, on a televised game. I don't want to reject a CBI invite again. I don't need that for my heart or for my fandom. I don't need that. So yeah, I'd love a home court NIT game. I think that'd be great for the program. Obviously, I want to shoot for the stars. If I'm projecting us to beat Creighton, maybe I should shoot a little higher and say maybe we can sneak into the dance. I think that all depends on what happens in the Big Ten tourney. Like you said, avoid the playing games. You kind of mentioned, you play 2 duds basically, and you're 2 games tired before you get to play one of the top 4 teams. Makes it a little bit harder, but that's the beauty of March, though. You never know what could happen. You know, not going to say we're going to have a Kemba Walker run, but
why not though?
You never know. You never know in March. And with an old team, you know, Penn State had a great run last year. Who's to say it can't be us this year? We'll see what the season brings, but I have faith that this team might surprise some people.
Stake your flag right now. Do we get in the tournament?
Yes.
Whoa! There you have it. He is on record.
Get in the tournament.
He is on record with the prediction.
Might be a playing game at the 11, but we'll get there.
I would be so happy playing in Dayton. I would be ecstatic. I might just drive to Dayton. I'll be honest with you. So, anyways, well, thanks for listening in. I think that pretty much wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about. Very much looking forward to what this team looks like in this Doan game. Obviously, plan on attending, so we'll get a firsthand look at what that appears like. Right. Mike, any final thoughts as we kind of close this out?
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate some of the points I made, I'm excited to see this team play. I'm excited to see what comes of the point guard position. I'm excited to see what they can do in conference on the road. Maybe we can steal a couple wins. I love that we have the oldest team in the Big Ten. It gives me faith. It gives me hope that maybe we can make a run this year. It's been done before. Why not us? I think we got a shot.
Love it. You can follow all our socials. We are Scarlet Shootaround Pod. We are Scarlet Shoot Pod on Twitter /X, on Instagram. I don't think I've done anything on that yet, but find us on YouTube. That's where all of our video podcasts are posted. And then find us either on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever your choice is. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in. Very much looking forward to the start of the season. I'm Blake, and for co-host Mike, we will see you soon. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.